Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Kimberly Boschman and this is the Intentionally Intuitive Podcast. In this week's episode of Numerology Quick Takes, we're going to take a look at the forecast for the week of November 10th, 2025. This is a general forecast. If you would like your own personal numerology reading, please book some time with me. My information's in the description box below. Also, the forecasts for 2026 for each life path number are available now. You can check yours out if you haven't already. It's certainly shaping up to be quite a year next year, so have a listen if you haven't already. All right, so this week, we're not quite to 2026 yet. This week, November 10th. Okay, so this is quite a beautiful energy that we're working with this week. We're working with the vibration of the 46-1, which typically one energy brings in motivation, ambition. It lights the fire beneath us. It's about taking action. It's not being idle. We have to take the initiative. We have to go after the things that we want. First, we have to recognize what those are. Then we have to figure out the plan and then take the action. And that one energy is about taking the action that will get us to the place that is, best serves us, that best suits us. Because one energy is about the self, coming back to self, coming back home to you, to figure out what it is that you want and then how to achieve that, how to move towards that. So anytime we move through a one cycle, it's asking us to get started, to take the step necessary or the steps to overcome any self-doubt or fear or anything that's keeping us idle or keeping us from taking that step forward. So we might have to move through some of that before we can fully step into whatever it is that we're moving towards. But that one energy really brings the motivation. It brings that fire energy. It pushes us out of our shell. It pushes us out of the shadows to fully step into our role in this lifetime, right? In this moment, not necessarily in this lifetime, but in this moment. So there's no kind of hiding behind someone else. There's no, waiting for someone else to do something that will bring us whatever it is that we're wanting. The one energy reminds us that we are the leader within our own lives. We have to take the initiative. We have to take the steps in order to create the environment, the experience that we want to have. Other people can certainly contribute towards that. Other people can certainly support us, cheer us on. Again, be partners, walk with us in that journey, but nobody can do it for us fully, right? Someone could do it for us, but we're not going to get the same satisfaction. It's not going to fit the same. It's like getting someone's hand-me-downs. It might fit, but it's not going to fit as nicely and as perfectly as if it was something that we had sewn ourselves or created for ourselves. So when we move through these one cycles, again, it's that reminder to come back to self, to not only come back to ourselves to figure out what it is that we want in our experience. What are we lacking? What is it that we aren't seeing that we want to see? What is it that we want to create? And then it's about taking action, taking that initiative, putting in the effort, making it happen. And this is also an energy that reminds us that we're all leaders. Like we are all leaders in our own lives. And we are meant to step into that leadership, but be leaders alongside of others. It's not about leading others. That's not necessarily what the one energy is about. It's about being the leader, in sharing your gifts, in taking action that will create the environment or the resources or the situation that you want to see. But it's not about being, ahead of everyone else and being that kind of leader. It's truly about sharing your own gifts, sharing your own wisdom, your own experiences, taking action again that will not only serve you, but serve others, and leading alongside of others, remembering that we are all leaders within our own lives. So very, very powerful week, again, for coming back to ourselves and recognizing where it is that we're sabotaging ourselves, where it is that we're selling ourselves short, where it is that what we've been waiting for is standing right in front of us, but we have fear around that, or we are sabotaging that for fear of failure or being misunderstood or whatever comes in. And so there's a lot of sort of tackling that and overcoming that so that there's nothing standing in the way of you shining, of you truly being that leader within your own life. And that's powerful. And that's also inspirational. That inspires other people to do the same. It's when we try to lead others or manipulate others or control the environment or control others in some way that, in order to be that leader, to have that power, that we actually end up not only sabotaging ourselves, but sabotaging others as well. And we start to see the energy constrict. We start to see, things that were once possible become not so possible. We actually start to really minimize the potential of the experience and what's possible. And it's interesting because this energy, again, is likely playing out on the global stage. This is a universal cycle that we're all moving through and will all be affected by. So it'll be interesting this week to see where it is that the individual starts to recognize their own power and no longer sort of just eats whatever is fed to them. And again, we could see this globally. So again, people who think that they are in power, people who think that they have control over others, may find out this week that that's not necessarily the case. It's never been the case. It's just, again, goes back to what we give another person, how much permission we give another person to have that control, to influence us in that way, or to sort of force feed us what it is that we don't want to eat. So we could see, again, sort of on the global stage, things playing out, things coming to light that, again, move towards people feeling more empowered, taking that power back and not just easily falling in line. There's really, when we're talking about a one cycle and we're talking about one energy, the focus is on autonomy. It's on the autonomy that each of us, that's our birthright to have. And so when that autonomy is taken away or threatened in some way, or has sort of been beaten out of us, metaphorically speaking, at some point, the soul kind of, yearns for that autonomy again, because we can't accomplish what we are meant to accomplish in this lifetime if we don't have that autonomy and if we don't embrace it and if we allow someone else to have control over us. In my book, Find Your Way in Love and Relationships with Numerology, I actually talk a little bit about this. I can't remember in which chapter now, but where, at the end of the day, when we take the keys back, right? When we no longer allow someone else to drive in our life, the experience of our life, and we take the keys back, we start driving. We become the driver of our own lives, right? We become autonomous. We then have control over our own lives, not someone else's, because we don't want to drive somebody else's car, but we have that autonomy within our own lives. And so we recognize that we shape our own experiences. If something is not serving us, we find a way to start to move in a different direction. If something is serving us, if it feels good, if it feels aligned, if it's supporting us, if it's aiding in our evolution, then we continue to build with that. But ultimately, the goal is for each of us to take the keys back and to drive our own vehicle, so to speak, right? Metaphorically speaking. And there's a lot of responsibility that comes with being that driver. But that's once we have the keys and we're in that driver's seat, then we can start to understand that responsibility. And then we can start to make informed decisions. And again, how we want our lives to look, what we want our experiences to look like, who we want to surround ourselves with, what we want to surround ourselves with, where we want to live, who we want to live with, all of these things. We start to gain that autonomy back. We start to gain that sense of empowerment back. So anytime we move through a one cycle, it's going to have us looking at where is it that we give our power away? Where is it that we don't take up enough space? Where is it that we are not being our own best advocate? Where is it that we need to speak up more about what we need, what we want, how we feel, and not take the reactions that may come from others too personally, because it really doesn't, another person's reactions really have nothing to do with us. Because at the end of the day, we're all driving our own car, trying to stay in our own lane, trying to get to our destination. Or that's the goal anyway. But you can certainly drive alongside of others, right? As we know in traffic, and we can give each other grace, and we can, not be aggressive and all of these things. So, when we move through a one cycle, it's really helping us to recognize that, and to recognize that it's not about having control over another person. It's not about really another person's actions. It's about our own actions, our own choices, our own delivery, and also how we process the external world and other people's reactions. And there's a lot, this isn't like overnight work. That's why we have so many one cycles throughout our journey. But yeah, it's interesting. And it'll be interesting to see how it plays out on the global stage as well, because I think we are really in this movement, and I think we're really going to see it come next year, because next year, 2026, is a one universal cycle. But there is this movement right now where the power is shifting back to the people. That's Pluto in Aquarius. And Pluto is going to be in Aquarius until, for the next 18 years or so. For a while. So this is a lengthy process. But, we're closing out a 9 cycle this year, universal 9 cycle, and we're stepping into a 1 universal cycle next year. So I think we're going to see a lot of this, greater individual autonomy, not about just becoming, where we're so individualized. There's the sense of community is still very much needed, coming together with others. But again, it's that leading alongside of others. Each person is the leader within their own lives. No one's trying to, take the other person's keys and drive their car for them. We're allowing each other to have the space, right? The 3 car lengths, I think it is in the United States, that you're supposed to give the other car. I don't know how I got on this metaphor, but here we are. But so, yeah, it'll just be interesting. And I think this week is a beautiful sort of laying the groundwork for that, for us to see, there's things that we can want. There's things that we, desire to experience. But a lot of times those don't happen without us taking the lead. A lot of times we don't understand what's needed without us taking the lead. And it might not work out the way that we want it to, especially if it deals with other people. But we can be satisfied in the knowing that we did everything in our power to see how it would play out by taking action, taking the initiative, being that leader within our own lives. So yeah, this week you could see where it is that you keep giving your keys away. And this will be a great week to, ask for those keys back, or take those keys back and get back in the driver's seat of your own car. So the other thing I would say about this week, this is a beautiful week. Now we have Mercury just went into retrograde over the weekend. So, this isn't one of those times, also working with 46 energy, that can be really nostalgic. This can be a time where we get reacquainted with someone or something or ourselves. And it's that opportunity to revisit something. It's always interesting to me when people say, like, let's just use this example, like someone, maybe you have a relationship with someone and that relationship goes south and you part ways. It's always interesting to hear people say, you can't go back. You can't. Why would you want to go back? Why would you want to revisit that? Why would you want to? But that doesn't make any sense, because of course you can revisit it. Of course you can connect with people that you've disconnected with in the past. Of course you can, again, reconnect. And the whole reason for that is because situations change, people change, Everyone evolves and grows in their own way. And so when we have these periods of like Mercury retrograde or cycles of 46, this is an opportunity to get reacquainted, to reconnect. And so it's not uncommon for people to show back up in your life during these cycles. And it's so close-minded to say, I'm not reconnecting with that person. I'm not going to have a conversation because of what happened in the past. And there's no need to go back to the past. No, you're not going back to the past. That's done. You're in the present moment. And so if someone if you're reconnecting with someone, or if you're being reacquainted with someone, you're getting to know, you're having the open mind and the open heart to have the conversation with them in this moment, because it's very likely that you've changed, they've changed, the experience has changed, the environment has changed. And not always, but to assume that that's not possible is incredibly close-minded. And we can miss out in such incredibly beautiful experiences with that close-mindedness. And so what I would say is, if something is being represented to you, especially this week under this 46 cycle, or during the Mercury retrograde, because Mercury retrograde is just such a beautiful time to revisit, review, revise. And that includes with people, right? With communication. And so if someone resurfaces at this time, instead of holding on to that pettiness and that anger and that vindictiveness and keeping that person pigeonholed in their, again, like who they were in the past or what the experience was in the past, just have the conversation. You might find out pretty quickly that, nope, this isn't really a connection that serves me at this time, or it's not a connection that, serves the highest good of all involved. And you can make that informed decision after the conversation. But it's so closed-minded to say, you can't go back to a connection that you had in the past. So yeah, this energy just reminds us that we're always on this path of evolution and growth. And part of that is recognizing that everyone's on that path. And it might not be the timeline that we want. It might not look the way we want it to look for that person or for ourselves. But we're all on that path of evolution and change and transformation. I mean, that is literally life. So to assume that, you've changed and you've grown, but the other person has sort of stayed stagnant in that of who they were back 10 years ago is very, very, very short-sighted. So I would say whatever the universe wants to reacquaint you with this week, be open, be curious. You don't have to say yes. You don't have to reinvest. You don't have to, reconnect if that's not something that feels right or feels good. But just make sure that you're basing that on how that person is presenting in this moment, not clouding your judgment with how you have sort of painted them to be forever and ever based on their past actions. This is something that trips humans up all the time. And, it really sort of impedes our own personal evolution and growth and keeps us from forgiveness and grace and all those things. So again, whatever or whoever the universe wants to get you reacquainted with this week, just be open, have the conversation. And that way, again, if things don't progress or things still don't feel good for you or the other person or both, then that's okay. But at least, you were curious and through that conversation that it's not what serves you at this time. Same thing with it's not uncommon to have an old employer contact you during these cycles, or someone who you used to work with who now maybe works in a different place, but reaching out, wanting to see if you're interested in this new venture or going back to the old venture. And maybe you would be. if you have the conversation. But if you just, again, base it on, okay, well, this is what happened, again, 10 years ago, so I'm not going back to that. No, you're not going back to that. It might look very, very different, but you won't know unless you have the conversation. So just be open to, again, who or what the universe wants to reacquaint you with. This is also, I mean, this cycle is really incredibly beautiful for good karma, like things coming in that feel really, really good. Almost like, you've done your good deeds and now here's the repayment, right? Things are paying off. New opportunities could come in. You could see success come in from efforts that you've put forth in the past. You could find yourself being the center of attention. Remember, this is ultimately one energy. You could receive some kind of gift or inheritance from some kind of situation that occurred in the past or that stem from the past. That's very possible. So maybe you used to work for someone and you got along with them really, really well, but then again, you kind of got disconnected. Maybe you moved, they moved, whatever. Life happens. Maybe something happens with them and they left you a tremendous amount of inheritance in their will. You just never know. It's such a beautiful energy for reminding us that anything is possible. Anything is possible unless we sort of cut it off, unless we sort of build that wall and keep ourselves from receiving the beauty that, again, the universe is always bestowing on us. So this is one of those times, again, where the past could resurface. But again, I just caution you and say, don't be too quick to only see the person or the thing or whatever in the light of the past. See this person or this thing or this opportunity in the present moment and how they are presenting to you now. Because that's how you're going to get the most out of this cycle. And that's how you're going to potentially open yourself up to some beautiful opportunities. Now, this can also bring up, good friends that you've had in the past that, again, maybe just life made it so that, your lives went in different directions, but they might resurface at this time. You might be able to have an opportunity to reconnect, and that can bring in a lot of joy and contentment and sort of fill your heart up. So that can feel really, really good. Going on trips, connecting with others that, again, maybe you haven't seen in a while, but that are important to you can be a beautiful time for that. And yeah, just being open and communicating and sharing your feelings is so important, especially during this kind of cycle. Again, remember, you're your own best advocate. And so you have to speak up for yourself. You have to express yourself. You have to say what you need, what you want, how you feel. And also holding space and creating that space for the other person to do that as well, of course. But this could also bring in some significant changes within your experience. So you could find yourself in a new place with new people. Again, this is one energy, so new beginnings are very, very possible, even though there's a strong influence of sort of the past and revisiting the past in some way or getting reacquainted with something in the past. There's also this opportunity this week for brand new opportunities with, again, connecting with new people that really bring a lot of promise into your life and potential for new, beautiful opportunities. And it's also very, very possible that those old experiences or those connections from the past could be the ones who are bringing in the new opportunity. And so that's why I say, don't be too quick to just dismiss it or, again, see it in the light of the past. You want to be very present with whatever presents to you this week. And be, again, have an open mind, be curious, see where it takes you. And the other thing I will say too is, a lot of times so much of this is just energetic, right? So maybe you aren't physically connecting with that person from the past, but maybe they keep entering your mind. Maybe you keep thinking about them. Maybe you feel a strong connection energetically with them. Then, maybe think about, do you want to initiate? Do you want to be the one that reaches out to them to reconnect and to have the conversation? And maybe that's not the right thing for you, and maybe it's not the right time or whatever. But the point is to whatever, again, the universe is trying to reacquaint you with. Take the time to be curious about it whether it's journaling, whether it's, revisiting thinking about the experience and how it played out. What was your responsibility? What was the other person's responsibility? What are you carrying that you don't need to carry anymore? What is the burden? What is, and kind of moving through those. And that can, of course, help you to release some of that more negative energy. And you don't necessarily have to connect with that person in the physical in order to do that. But that's very possible that could come up also this week. It's also very possible that the actual person could present this week. So, or again, like an opportunity that's tied to something from the past. So with all of it, again, just be open, be curious, and don't be too quick to dismiss. And I think that you'll get the absolute most out of this week, and it'll feel good. All right, I'm going to leave it there. I hope it's a great one. Take care, everyone. Thanks so much. Bye for now.